Welcome to College Hoops Under the Radar by OFG Sports. Here's your host, the online sports guys.
Welcome back to another round of all of the things that we do here at OSG Sports, and it is time for yet another tour inside that piece of paper that you're probably going to be filling out come March, shall we say? And the folks that fly under the radar, our guest this go-round is to give us the education about High Point, the Big South, and a team that's already north of 20 wins, and the man that does color for them, Reginald Walker, dropping by. Reg, thanks for dropping by here on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm actually fired up for this. This is a situation where you see a team kind of rolling, playing really good basketball, but there's so many other stories attached to this basketball team.
All right, and I know that we're going to do that here in the A block for the education. Right now, as you and I are talking, 29 games played, 15-1 at home, 24-5 with an 828 winning percentage right now, 24 out of 29. High Point right now, and they've only got a one-game lead in conference in the Big South over UNC Asheville. What has it been like to see this team get to 24-5?
Well, it's been really interesting because of the way that sort of you looked at this team coming into this season, and you could see that there was a lot of talent from top to bottom on the roster. The question was going to be, how would they deploy it? How would they find rotational minutes to find a consistency? But they went through some things throughout the season. Some guys were banged up from time to time that really impacted some of those rotations early. Now you're starting to see a team that's finally gotten healthy, pretty much fully healthy. And now they're starting to really find their stride. Guys are understanding better the little things. And I think that's what makes this team so scary when you think about it, is some of the little things you earlier in the season, there were some combinations at times on the floor, even at the beginning of conference play, that quite frankly, Coach Huss hadn't really put out there together. And you could see at times there were some communication gaps, maybe a difference in how quickly a guy would make a certain cut compared to a different guy. Now that they've gotten all of that sort of cleaned up and figured out, they know who their alphas are, and they can kind of play through that. So I think that's really been something that they've grown with throughout the season.
So who are those alphas for those of us that haven't had the chance to check out HPU this year?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because most people would start with Keza Jiffa, and Keza was the preseason Big South Player of the Year, a really good, crafty, left-handed point guard who can really shoot the ball from deep. I think he shoots somewhere around 33% from three. Really, really intelligent, 45% plus from the field. So the decision-making is there. I think early in the year, he might have been trying to be player of the year on every single time, every single possession he touched the basketball. I think he settled in from that. As good as he is, though, Damarian Williams, he wears number 4, another really good guard, heady player, very, very efficient, shoots about 40% from three, closer to 47, 48% from the field. Very, very efficient, strong body. So if you try to bump him off his spots, good luck, you're going to fail oftentimes. So he's another one. But I think the ultimate alpha, when he is absolutely right for this team, is Kamani Hamilton. He's about 6'8". He's got an ability. I say this every time I do a game. If he's one of the impact players that I want to highlight that game, the first thing I say is when he's playing his brand of best basketball, there is not anybody in that league, the Big South, and I'm not sure there's many in the country that can guard Kamani Hamilton. He's 6'8". He's over 200 pounds. He can shoot it from deep. He's got an ability to get to the middle of the floor, get to the post moves as well. And oh, by the way, if you put if you're not paying attention, he'll turn the corner and dunk on anybody that is underneath the basket. So I would call him the ultimate alpha, but he's also very much a team guy. So he's not a me kind of player. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that with players and don't view them as alphas, but I think he is certainly that.
3 players right now in double figures in scoring, and that was the 3 alphas that you mentioned, and they're hovering right there anywhere between 13.5 and 15 points a game. But you have 6 players that are getting more than 20 minutes of action every night. So it's not just those 3, and you've got to prepare for a deep bench that's going to come off for High Point each and every time out.
Yeah, the scariest thing is the 3-headed monster. I call it the 3-headed monster at center. They've got Jocelyn Bodo, and to give you a little backstory on him, he's originally from Yaoundé, Cameroon, which if you go back and do some of the history, Joel Embiid, Alfred Aboya, Luke Richard Bamute, the list goes on and on from that sort of region of Cameroon. So the lineage is there. He didn't play a whole lot of basketball in high school. He's a 7-footer, a legit 7-footer, great anticipation in terms of a shot blocker. When he's rim running and rolling hard, they are really, really difficult to deal with. And then behind him is Simon Hildebrandt out of Manitoba. He's about 6'8", 6'9", somewhere in that range. But he's much more of a stretch five, kind of a pick and pop guy. Here's the problem. If you don't close out under control, he'll pump and go by you and dunk on anybody that is down there. And then they have Josh Abukalanua, who's a freshman. He's a legit 6'9" plus as well, coming out of Australia, that has really come on the last few games. He's a really, really solid player. So that's kind of a three-headed monster at the center position. And then one of the things I always like to mention is what kind of perimeter players can always show up. Bobby Pettiford Jr. is probably one of the most efficient guards you'll find in the country. He's got an ability to finish near the rim with both hands, left and right hand. He's a smart decision maker with the basketball. He can shoot the three as well. Love Bobby Pettiford Jr.'s game. And then Abdoulaye Thiem, who this is not his first year in the program. He's a transfer from Minnesota, originally out of Florida. Abdoulaye Thiem can really shoot the basketball. Last year, he started, I think, all but one game. This season, he's only started 2 games. His minutes have been very different than last year, but he always answers the bell when his name is called. He can really shoot it from deep, but don't get it twisted. He'll put it on the floor and blow by you, too.
8 internationals on this roster, and I find that to be really interesting, too. I assume that head coach Alan Huss either has one heck of a WhatsApp group or he's got international dialing and Zoom and all these things. How does he assemble all of this talent from around the planet to go into one place and understand and accept what he wants to do on the floor?
Well, it's pedigree. He played at Creighton, so he knows Coach McDermott really well. Part of, in the beginning, I believe his first head coaching job was at La Lumiere Prep in Indiana, where you often get some of those international players and start to build some of those pipelines. And then his staff is excellent. They know how to find guys. Coach Nesbitt, I could go all the way down the list with this coaching staff. They do an excellent job. Flynn Clayman, Nesbitt, Edwards, Matt Brady, this whole staff, they do a really, really good job of mining for talent and understanding how guys fit in what they're trying to do. So I think that's a big factor in it as well. But then I think part of it, and what's really attractive, particularly to offensive-minded kind of European players, Titus Argunas, another good one who his minutes have really dropped this season as well. A very smooth left-handed guard. He can play on the ball. He can play off the ball. He just doesn't get a heavy load of minutes right now just because they're so deep. But I think the main reason why is because this is a staff, while they do have a lot of sets and they do have, some organized things that they want to do, there is some freedom within what they're trying to do from a technical and set play kind of standpoint. And I think that allows players to feel much more comfortable and be willing to come and play for Alan Huss. And I think the environment at High Point on the campus is very conducive to sort of allowing kids from other parts of the world to come in and be comfortable. It's I don't want to say it's an insulated campus because it's pretty big. It's kind of sprawling to an extent, but there's a level of enclosure to it that kind of forces a little bit of that community aspect to it. I think that helps the players as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention a family atmosphere, and that way that I'm not going to use the word confined, but when you're close to each other and you can spend a lot of time together there at High Point, you get acquainted, you know each other, and you know almost where that person is going to go almost with ESP by the time things are done out there on the floor. When it comes to the Big South in general, what are folks missing out on by not catching a Big South game, whether it's on the Plus with you and Darren or in person? What are folks missing out by not seeing the Big South?
I think the first thing they're missing is probably, and I hate to say this, and there's probably going to be some athletic directors that send me text messages after this. They're missing out on probably the next crop of coaches that we're going to see at maybe some Power 4 schools. This is a league that I think has a dearth of really, really good coaches. When you talk about Quentin Farrell at Presbyterian, I think Sa Nimley at Charleston Southern, who just lost to High Point on Wednesday night, I think That's another really, really good coach. He played at Charleston Southern, one of the best players in the history of that school as well. Obviously, Coach Morrell at UNC Asheville, they lose Drew Pember, and what do? They're back at the top or near the top of the Big South standings. I didn't even get to Mark Prosser, the son of the late Skip Prosser, another really, really good coach. And I can continue to go down the list in this league. I just think this league is dynamic. Griff Aldridge up at Longwood as well. Darius Nichols at Radford. I mean, I think every coach in this league does a really, really good job. And you can see and you watch these teams play and you see some of the little things that they're able to do and how they deploy their guys. And you can tell that the development is there. The opportunities are there for the players to continue to get better. So I think the biggest thing I would tell people, if you're not paying a whole lot of attention to the Big South, you're missing out on a bunch of really, really good coaches and teams that play a good brand of basketball. I think sometimes the physicality gets overstated in this league. And by that, I mean, we see a few too many whistles in some of these games. There's a physicality that this league plays with that I think sometimes gets lost. I say this all the time. There's a difference in getting bumped or being touched and being fouled. Those are very different things, and I think sometimes that gets lost by some of the officials across the league.
Reginald Walker, part of the crew that calls High Point, where we get to watch what's going on in the Big South. Cut the promo for me. You've got 2 games left in the regular season before you get to the conference tournament. For folks that want to catch you and what's going on at HPU, how do they do it?
Next Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, I should say, the 26th, High Point's season or senior day. They're going to host USC Upstate.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. It's going to be, I think, listen, this team, I think about this team and I think about the league really as a whole. If High Point wins out and they're able to win out through the conference championship and get to the NCAA tournament, the scariest thing about this is I think this should be probably closer to a 12 seed, a 13 seed, probably more likely. And it's going to be one of the ones you might want to circle, depending on the matchup, as somebody that can advance past the first game because of their ability and their depth. They've got a legit, like I said, a legit 7-footer in the middle. They've got a multitude of guards that can hurt you from the perimeter and drive it. They've got guys that will attack the glass. This Jocelyn Bodo is not known as a scorer. Right? He had a night a couple of games ago, 19 points and 21 rebounds, 6 dunks. Okay. They know how to get him the basketball in the right spot when they're attacking the glass. This is a very, very difficult team to beat. One coach sort of explained to me, he said, you know, when you get ready to play High Point, you just kind of laugh because they're like Noah's Ark. They have 2 of everything. And I laughed and I said, well, that's every position except center. They got 3 of those. And he laughed and he goes, yeah, and they probably got 4 point guards. Yeah, they got a lot of everything. But this is a team that I think is rounding into shape. And the best thing about this team, and I want to give Alan Huss a ton of credit, he never lets them rest on their laurels. He's not a wild dictator, but he's going to continue to push those players to give more and be better and focus on winning. He is as intense as they can be during a game, but every single opportunity he gets to coach up one of his guys, he does not miss it. He maximizes the opportunities to coach his guys. His coaching staff maximizes their abilities to work with and coach up the entire group. And so as you watch them down the stretch of the season and into the conference tournament, I think that's going to be something that you could pay attention to on the periphery. But I think the best part about it is they are built for tournament play because it doesn't matter the scenario. Alan Huss can look down the bench and find another answer to whatever the riddle is. They can go 11, 12 deep if they really need to. I mentioned Titus Sargunas, whose minutes have not really been there, but Alan Huss trusts him in certain situations, so he can put him in the ball game. And there's several other guys like that. I haven't even mentioned Trey Benham, who I laugh. Trey Benham had a nice little kind of runner off the glass on Wednesday night against Charleston Southern, and the joke was that's only his second field goal attempt from inside the three-point line in conference play. And he shoots it close to 40% from deep. He's a real marksman, a lefty. He can shoot it as well. And they've got several guys, including Trey Benham, when they come off the bench, There's a level of energy. There's a level of tenacity, particularly on the defensive end, that lifts this team as well. They've got the right recipe. I always say, if you want to win in the tournament, you've got to have really good lead guard play. And they've got Keza Jiffa or Damarian Williams or Bobby Pettiford Jr. You've got to have elite shooting. Chase Johnston, if he had more attempts, he'd be top 5 in the nation in three-point shooting. At one point, maybe 2 weeks ago, he was at 54% from beyond the arc. That's an insane number to shoot the ball. So you've got elite shooting with him. Keza Jiffa can knock it down from deep. Damarian Williams, I mentioned Bobby Pettiford, Abdul-Latif Thiem as well. So you've got the shooting. And then can you command the glass inside? Jocelyn Bodo, as I mentioned, Kamani Hamilton helps with that as well, who can go get offensive rebounds. And then do you have a dynamic scorer that can score from any part of the floor? And that's Kamani Hamilton. So they have all of those pieces. And people forget, Kamani Hamilton was a top 100 recruit when he came out of high school, went to Mississippi State. Now he's at High Point. So he's a high-level talent that's a part of this basketball team. They've got a really good group and a great group of leaders. And I think that's the key. Their leadership is solid as well. It keeps this team grounded.
Reginald Walker pairing with Darren Vaught. They're on ESPN+. They do the home games for HPU. There's a game at Gardner-Webb. Then they come back senior night as it's SC Upstate taking on High Point. Cannot thank you enough for the education, because for us, getting this inside intel is always going to be fun stuff when we're looking at pieces of paper and putting stuff down in pen instead of pencil. Do not be a stranger, Reginald. Come by anytime, and probably in the tournament when the team's pushing 30 wins, we'll probably have you and or Darren back and then do a tag team or something like that. Thanks for dropping by and letting us go under the radar with High Point. Absolutely appreciate it. One more nugget, this High Point offense, in the top 20 in effective field goal percentage in the nation. They are really, really efficient on the offensive end. Appreciate you. What he said.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Check out our X page, formerly known as Twitter, for a rant, comment, or whatever is on your mind about college basketball. Now back to college hoops under the radar. Here's your host, John Wilkerson.
College Hoops Under the Radar rolls on, and John Wilkerson here with Jon Nelson, John Fox, three Johns talking hoops.
Whoa, careful.
He doesn't like it, does he, John Fox?
No,
he just doesn't like that term.
Nope.
All right.
Look, it makes you sound like you're at Bonnaroo or something at the other end of the farm grounds, Three Johns talking hoops. You're over there at the other end of the KOA. That's what that sounds like.
Yeah, well, I'm used to county fairs. All right, so over the weekend, the NCAA tournament committee came out with their top 16 seeds to kind of whet your appetite of what you might see when March Madness starts. And I know it just committed a violation there, but so be it. Sue me. So
Wilkers.
What's interesting about this, and we've talked about it since we began our podcast, is just how dominant the SEC is. Auburn and Alabama 1 and 2. Quite frankly, who thought of that in our lifetimes? We would see Auburn and Alabama 1 and 2 in college basketball, but it's kind of cool to see. Duke and Florida round out the top 4, so they would get the top seeds in each region. So, man, Florida is playing outstanding basketball. I don't want to be matched up against Florida when you got into the later rounds. But Alabama and Auburn are for real, and so is Duke, and that's a pretty strong top 4.
The problem is that Alabama went into Columbia, Missouri last night and got their heads handed to them.
So did I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
Mizzou played out of their mind, though.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
I'm waiting, though, for someone to go onto the 280 character app and assume the character ID of Nate Oates' clipboard and Cal's clipboard, because 2 clipboards suffered midweek in the SEC. What are we going to do about clipboard assault? What are we going to do? What are we going to do to preserve these boards so they're not cut in pieces by coaches who are mad, who apparently chase after them like Daniel LaRusso did with the ice sculptures?
Well, I'm not so
We need
worried
to
about the
strengthen
clipboards.
we need to strengthen the world's clipboards. That's what we need to do.
I'm not worried about the clipboards. That's kind of a step down now because it used to be chairs that were destroyed. The most famous video, obviously, is Bob Knight and
But he
throwing a chair
threw it. It
against
wasn't even
Purdue.
it was just thrown. It wasn't
I
destroyed.
saw some coaches literally destroy chairs with their feet or with their fists back in the 80s and in the heyday of college basketball. We talked about hair and some of our favorite hair back then, but those guys, they knew how to put on a show on the sidelines, and chairs often suffered. The next four in this list: Tennessee, Texas A&M, Purdue, and Houston. Keeping your SEC theme. I watched Purdue. They played well against Michigan State, but Michigan State, that's a hot basketball team getting hot at the right time. And Tom Izzo is a master of getting his kids ready in late February, early March.
Yeah, one thing you've illustrated already why I brought up the Missouri game last night is this is going to be ever changing because the leagues are so tough that there's a lot to shake out here over the next few weeks. And Lord knows what the top 16 are going to look like by the end. Purdue has now lost a couple in a row, and it doesn't get any easier.
19-7 for Purdue right now, and Michigan State at 20-5. If you go to the Associated Press poll, Purdue took a dive last in the most recent poll, dropping all the way down from 7 to 13. Michigan State, they dropped 3 themselves, so you've got 13 and 14, and you've got Purdue and Michigan State right there if you look at things in the AP poll.
I don't think Purdue has played bad. It's just that they faced some teams that have just been able to finish it at the end. And that's the key when you get into February, March, is you got to finish, and you got to be strong at the finish. The rest of the 16 seeds round out with Iowa State at 9, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Arizona, another team that's getting hot at the right time, Texas Tech, Michigan. I kind of like how the Wolverines have been playing. I can't wait to see their 2 games against Michigan State. Kansas is starting to crater a little bit. They lost badly last night, Wednesday night. And team I really like that can make a very deep run is at 16. That's St. John's. I mean, Rick Pitino has got that team playing at a high level.
I'm going to defer a comment to Sly on that one.
Well, first I'd like to mention that this is the best Wisconsin team in several years. They've got a variety of ways to hurt you. They can all shoot. They look really connected. The Big Ten usually doesn't fare well in the tournament, but Wisconsin has a chance to go deep. And Rick Pitino has seen it all. I would not want to run up against him with the tough old team that he's putting out there. And I'm glad he's back. He's going to be good for the tournament.
Well, you know as well as I do that the 14-3 and the 13-4 matchups are usually ripe for the upsets. And so you've got Wisconsin's kind of in that zone. But I kind of feel like the Badgers are strong enough to whatever they withstand from a mid-major team, they can handle. But then you got Texas Tech in that zone, Iowa State and Kansas, Arizona State, St. John's, and Kentucky and Michigan. Of that group, who do you think is the most suspect for that type of upset?
I would say Texas Tech.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you.
I've seen a lot of these games in these leagues. Some teams just seem to have a huge home court advantage and put them on a neutral floor. Texas Tech to me looks like they're the type that could go down.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, Sly. I think that Texas Tech is your box of chocolates here, and I legitimately there are teams in the Southeastern Conference where we can sit there and go, I know what to expect. I know what to expect. I know what to expect. Texas Tech does not fall into that category. So, at least for me anyway, and for you. So, I would say off the top of my head, go to Lubbock. And the screaming that you heard was folks in Lubbock refuting every word we just said.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you too about Texas Tech. But now Kansas is on this list. I don't expect them to be on this list when we come to when the selection is made in March.
Yeah.
The way they're playing right now, but I kind of feel like Kentucky could be vulnerable as well because they've had some games where they'd look world beaters, and then they've had some games where you're just scratching your head. And look, I think Mark Pope has done a great job in his first year at Kentucky and kind of keeping the lunatic fringe not breathing down his neck as they tend to do with first year coaches.
We know you're out there.
Yes. But if you're looking for another alternative as to who could be vulnerable in that, I kind of look at Kentucky.
I've seen Sly just too many different versions of Kentucky. When the big men get hot and they're finding ways inside the defenses that try to keep them from going into the paint and getting the high percentage shots, that version of Kentucky is going to jump up and bite folks. But then you'll end up with a night where they can't hit a jumper outside of 12 feet, and they're susceptible to turnovers. So I think Kentucky, I know that folks, when they want to fill lines on a page coming up, in about a month, I'm not putting either one of those K schools deep into those lines. That the K school that we talked about with Bill Self, where they had they matched the biggest loss ever in Bill Self's career, and then this team with the new head coach in the Bluegrass. They're blue bloods. I get it, and I understand folks want to fill out their brackets and go, ooh, chalk, chalk, chalk with names and everything, but the consistency is lacking in both of those teams for me.
So this will be a continuing rant of mine throughout the next few weeks. But if you run into a lower seed that's willing to change defenses, I think that causes problems for high major teams that play in leagues, particularly the Big Ten, who for some reason just refuse to play zone, and teams just have no idea how to play against a good zone or switching defenses or full court pressing. And if the scouting is right, I agree with you. Teams like that could go down, especially if they don't have good outside shooting.
I've always been surprised about how some of these top level teams and the big conferences are shocked at some of these mid-major schools that are led by seniors. Their guard play is well above what they expected, especially the ball handling and the ball distribution. It just seems like they're shocked by the fact that these lower level teams, I hate to say lower level, but these mid-major teams have the type of guard play that they do. And there's always some forward or even a skilled center that's been developed at that level that shocks them as well, that are able to hit some shots. But the guard play to me is always what kind of shocked me, that, oh my gosh, these guys can penetrate. These guys can ball handle. Oh, look at the distribution there, and they're hitting shots. And I think that's where they get the deer in the headlights look, and it's hard for those teams to recover.
And then you have these leagues where the whole offense is running a high ball screen, and then guys going one-on-one off of it. Some of these mid-major teams you're talking about also actually run stuff.
Yeah.
That good sets, good screen action, and they could really, bring up Brad Underwood when he was at Stephen F. Austin. They ran incredible stuff out of the spread. Very tough for teams to defend. So that to me is one of the best parts of the first couple rounds. And
the one thing too that they do is they consistently hit shots and not necessarily trying to go for three. You'll have a big guy that can consistently hit from the elbow, or you'll have somebody that can hit from 15, and that just puts these big schools in disarray because, all the film study in the world, I don't care who you are, you're going to think, if you're playing a low mid-major team, you're thinking, okay, name the score.
But they've played together. They're not. It's not the
They're
land.
seniors.
It's not
Senior
the
leadership.
land. Yeah, it's not the land of the one and done. When we're looking at the conferences that are outside of the Power Four, and we see consistently those teams that will be the 12, 13, 14s, but they've got 4 seniors. They've got 5 seniors. I mean, they'll go very, very deep into their benches with players that, I don't know, have spent more than 1 year in an offensive system.
Yeah.
For them, it's second nature. I mean, look, we could go back to northern Iowa, and we can mention
Fine Missouri Valley team.
Ollie you have a shooter like Ollie Faroukmanesh,
Yeah,
who
hitting threes.
has zero conscience, but he's a senior leader. And when you have that kind of confidence and those kinds of players that are there, instead of the highfalutin freshman that you know is a one and done that is in there and is using more of their raw ability, than having to deal with a system defense. It's like, look, we're going to stand here and you got to try and figure out a way around us. And you get that youthful frustration that happens, and you end up with the 12, the 13, and the 14 who've been together for 3 and 4 years, have that late game composure that will give you these wins in the tournament and not surprise folks because you've listened to this show. So this is how this works.
Well, I've got a list of top 10 mid-majors. According to the net rankings, which is what the NCAA uses when they're putting together their selections, and some of these teams will probably have an upset, a 14 over a 3. Some of these teams, I think we kind of expect them to at least get to the Sweet 16 and maybe further. Of course, the top of the list is Gonzaga. They are ranked in the 10th in the net right now. They're 2-5 in quad 1 wins, but this might hurt them. And this is a stat that I heard Bubba Cunningham, the chairman of the selection committee, talk about, something that's going to carry some weight when they're selecting teams and where to seed them. They're 47th in wins above the bubble, which kind of surprised me. And then you got St. Mary's at number 2. Ranked 20th in the net, 4-2 in quad 1, 27th in wins above the bubble. So in my opinion, St. Mary's is a lock to get in if they don't win the West Coast tournament or even the regular season title. And then at number 3 is our friends from VCU. The Rams are 34th in the net, only 1-1 in quad 1 wins and 56 in wins above the bubble. So they got some work to do. But I would expect those 3 teams to perhaps at least get into the Sweet 16. Now, depending on the draw, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, VCU is one of those teams, and it was a great interview last week, John.
Yeah.
Really. Who on earth would really want to play VCU in the first round?
Not it.
Yeah, they're going to be a tough out, but no matter who they play. They've got about everything you would want going into the tournament.
You look at other teams that are in the RV that just pulling the poll aside for a sec, Wilkie. You look at St. Mary's, Creighton, Mason, Gonzaga, High Point. You have all of these folks that are getting these votes. UC San Diego getting a couple of votes in depending on which poll you look at.
Well,
and, I mean,
UC San Diego is in this list at number 6.
Mm-hmm.
And the Tritons are, 2-1 in quad 1 wins and 54th in wins above the bubble. Now, I watched a little of the Tritons game last week. I believe it was against UC Davis. It was a home game. That team can shoot. That team is fundamentally sound, and that's kind of what you expect from a conference like the Big West.
Yeah.
Where I think they're going to have problems is with teams that like to get up and down the floor quickly because they're not a particularly quick team. But if they control tempo, they were very fundamentally sound on defense. It didn't look like they were making too many mistakes with their hands. moving their feet pretty well. But they're hitting shots. Now, again, it was against UC Davis, which is probably a middle of the road pack of the Big West. But they have a pretty good body of work right now, especially if you're looking at the eye test. They may make and I'm anticipating them getting a lower seed, a 14 or a 13. And if you're matched up against them in the first round, I think you're very nervous.
I looked this up before we started the show. They've played some tough games on the road, and they've won at Utah State. They haven't lost too many games. They won at UC Irvine, and they played close at San Diego State. So they've gone to some tough places and fared pretty well. I agree with you that another very scary first round opponent for anybody.
Above UC San Diego is New Mexico and Utah State, and they're battling out in the Mountain West. New Mexico's got a very impressive wins above the bubble at 29th and 3-1 in quad one wins. So not much is known about the Lobos right now. Utah State's getting some traction. They're 3-1 against the quad one and 32nd in wins above the bubble. I expect both those teams, no matter what happens, to be in the tournament. I don't know what's in the water, but in San Diego, but with San Diego State now in the mix as well.
It's the freaking Pacific Ocean, bro. It ain't nothing about the water. All you got to do is look to your west, and there's a lot of it.
Of course, San Diego State was in the title game a few years ago, and they've been pretty good for a while now. But they're in the mix, 4-4 in quad one, 38th in wins above the bubble. In case you're wondering, the University of San Diego is dead last in their league, so no chance of a San Diego threesome in the NCAA tournament.
Sounds like at Coronado Beach, but okay.
Yeah, bringing up the rear in the mid-major ranking here that I compiled. Santa Clara probably has some work to do, but I think they should get in. The problem with them, they're 83rd in wins above the bubble. That might hurt them with the selection committee since they're putting some weight on that. And then North Texas is they're 0-3 in wins in quad one wins, but they're leading their league, Conference USA, and so they're at number 10. So they're kind of on the edge of perhaps getting an at-large bid. So those are the, when I look at that list, UC San Diego is one that I'm looking at right now, that if I'm looking for, when I'm doing my brackets and maybe I can get a jump on somebody, the Tritons are that team I'm looking at. And, I've seen Utah State. I kind of like the way they play. That's a team that could probably make a nice run in the tournament and kind of be that Cinderella darlings, that team that we always seem to, the nation seems to latch on to.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
No, you look at the BPI, and you have Liberty actually at 67 in the BPI, and they are the highest ranked Conference USA team. Then you have some of the other folks we've been paying attention to. Boise out of the Mountain West is at 63. Dayton out of the A-10s at 62. You mentioned the Mean Green there at 61 in the BPI. You've got the Dons of San Francisco at 57, UC San Diego at 56, Cal Irvine's at 53, VCU's at 52, George Mason out of the A-10 is at 48, Gonzaga 45 in the BPI. So you look at a lot of familiar faces. Drake is at 40. San Diego State's at 39, but you see once you go from there, New Mexico at 31, and then from there you get that chalk from the Power Four that we're used to seeing. So a lot of the names that we're paying attention to, they are in the BPIs, and we're not looking at automatic bids through tournaments and things like that, but that's what you're staring at going through 68, just so you know, for those that are following along here on the take-home game. High Point was one of those that we were kind of sitting there going, okay, where are they? They're at 78 in the BPI. So keep an eye on all of this action and those folks that are below 68 in the BPI, get a conference tournament win, and then bump somebody else out to move the ladder down from that spot.
The Drake Bulldogs are starting to separate themselves in the Missouri Valley Conference, so they're going to be fun to watch. But John Fox, I know you put together a list.
A Sly and a list. Who knew?
Yeah, Jon Nelson, you transitioned beautifully into what I was going to throw out there. That
He's good at that.
Got this morass of teams in between, like 40 and 60.
Wow.
In the respective rankings, and Lord knows how many at-large bids will actually be available when it's said and done. But you've got a nice mixture of flailing high major conference teams and teams from mid-major conferences with great records, all in the same bucket. And we talked about Georgia and Arkansas last week, 39 and 40 in the net. I mean, Arkansas lost twice and they moved up. I mean, this is sort of the dynamic that's going to have to play out with the committee.
See, I heard some analysts say after the Texas A&M loss, that wasn't going to hurt them, and I really wasn't buying it. I was kind of drained after that game because I was pouring myself into that for the Hogs. The Auburn game just felt different. I mean, I think they played as good as they could against Auburn. Auburn's just a special team. Yeah. And again, I'm hearing the same thing. Well, that's a loss, but it shouldn't hurt Arkansas that much.
Quality loss.
Yeah, quality loss. And, how many of those are going to add up to where you're going to be playing in the NIT? Mm-hmm. Look, hats off to the Hogs. I was just as disappointed as they were last night. But now's the time you got to put together a string of wins, and you got to have a deep SEC tournament run really to impress the committee.
Yep. And then you had North Carolina with a gutty win at Syracuse last Saturday. It was so important that ESPN ran the Alabama game so long that they deliberately missed the first half of Syracuse, North Carolina.
You and I were texting back and forth on that too.
and we were all thankful for that because
yes, we were.
I think they wound up filling the second half mostly with commercials, just to get on to the 8 o'clock game.
Well, they got to get their ad money in there somewhere. They got to get the make goods laid in. Who would have thought? Who would have ever thought that when discussing the University of North Carolina and not doing it tongue in cheek, that you would use the adjectives gritty and gutty? I mean, traditionally, you're talking about tongue firmly planted in cheek and using hashtag sarcasm font, and you're talking about plucky upstart. And that's the next thing. I'm waiting for the plucky upstart North Carolina Tar Heels. I'm waiting for something like that you can attach to a Kentucky or a North Carolina, one of these blue bloods. Hey, they're a plucky upstart going into the tournament. Anything's Ted Baxter comes in here. I don't know. Plucky upstarts. You're going to associate that with a blue blood, kind of like what the locker room did with the LA Dodgers. No one thought we'd win. Yeah, and shut up. Stop talking.
That might be a play to Kansas now, too.
Plucky upstart Kansas Jayhawks. 4 words we never thought we'd hear in a sentence where the person speaking in it is being serious, and those of us outside the individual who is speaking it sit there and go, what, bruh? Legitimately, just hold up a sign. What, bruh? Hashtag plucky upstarts. Come on now. Earn your place, keep your place. If you are beige, if you are the white bread sandwich of bologna and cheese without any kind of mustard or mayo attached to the inside, just accept it. Become a better sandwich. Add some condiments. Have wheat bread. Put nice wrapping around it. Become a better sandwich.
Be the sandwich.
That's all I'm saying.
The sandwich.
Be the better sandwich. You can be a sandwich all you want. But right now, North Carolina, beige. They're a beige sandwich.
All it takes is a couple of wins, and the Grey Poupon will taste just as good.
You ain't kidding. Plucky upstarts. Bank on it.
Yeah, there are going to be several teams within this range that are going to be upset on Selection Sunday, and it'll be the drama will be which ones will be upset.
Be a better sandwich. That's all I want.
So you're saying that when they have their watch party, there's going to be some teams that are going to have their heads hanging over the chair in disbelief. And it might be some very familiar programs.
Forlorn. That's where we are.
Yes. Agreed.
Be a better sandwich.
So the theme for today has been liven up your sandwich a little bit.
Pretty much.
Kansas, North Carolina,
now.
Kentucky.
Use the A1.
Use the A1, yes.
Use the Grey Poupon.
Stay away from ketchup.
Go to French loaf.
Yeah, or Italian loaf.
Italian loaf, man. You got to do.
What do you got, John Fox?
He's got paper.
Nope, I was just like what we talked about last week. Some of these teams, George Mason is 21-5 overall, 12-1 in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Other teams, Vandy is 44 in the net, 5-8 in the league.
Yeah.
Which the SEC has got to shake itself out. Maybe like they did in football. There'll be enough bad losses from the respective teams to justify knocking some of them out of the at large.
Yeah, I think they're going to get double digit in bids this year, and I think that's going to take away a lot of the at large bids from some of the major conferences, but mainly from the mid majors that we think deserve them.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Mountain West could be hurt by it. I don't think the West Coast will be, because I think they've garnered the respect from the selection committee, but there's going to be some very disappointed bubble teams in the Big 12, in the ACC, in the Big East, which I think the Big East is having a great year as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see all that happening. But guys, things are starting to shake down a little bit. We're kind of in that home stretch. If you're a Missouri Valley fan, Arch Madness starts, I believe, in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
So we're almost into tournament time. So I think our talks will be heating up. We're starting to get some really good guests to come in. John, your High Point interview was a high point of this show.
I have a proposal to the floor. Do we know anyone that is either an electronic sports basketball playing junkie, or do we know someone that does computer simulations? And I will pose this to the floor for the listening public as well. Do either of the two of you know anyone in that vein?
Not me.
Not really.
Okay, because
we can find somebody.
Because what I propose is this. I propose that we have an under-the-radar computer simulation demolition derby. Once the 68 are named and the teams that do not make it, that we know should have, but because of television product and so on, do not make it, the individual or individuals that wish to go down this road for us and have the computer simulation demolition derby of all of the teams that are under the radar that don't make the tournament, we find out really who is team number 69. Nice.
And it shouldn't be too difficult for you and me, Jon Nelson, because Georgia Tech is right down the road. And for John Fox, because Rochester Institute of Technology isn't too far from you either.
Yeah, go to Cornell. Go to Cornell or something.
Or Cornell. That's not really an engineering school, but
them smart people though.
There's them smart people. Okay.
Well, smart people. This show is going to have an office in Ithaca, I believe, at some point. So we might as well start that now.
Yeah. So
Nelson and I are planning our trip to Ithaca because we hear there's some really nice cuisine there, as well as some basketball.
There's cuisine that is to be had, is what you're saying, in Ithaca. So yes, what I would propose is if a college senior wants a credited project for an internship, come up with a computer program where all of our under the radar teams have a demolition derby, and we find out really who is team number 69. So that is my thought for the week. Before we go, and I know that we got other things we got to do. Hoops on a budget. We got hoops on a budget in a couple of places, and feel free to go thumbs up or thumbs down. When I mention these when I mention these games, these are all Saturdays, by the way. Noon Eastern, TCU in Cincinnati at Fifth Third Arena in Cincinnati, Ohio. $6. Get in.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So John Fox is going to the Ohio Fraction, which sounds like a blues band or a funk band from the 1970s.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one. Mississippi State at Oklahoma, the Lloyd Noble Center in Norman. Get in price. Give me my $2. I want my $2. Okay. Also, Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. The Conti Forum.
Been there.
Georgia Tech and BC, ACC Network. Give me my $2. Colors are great during football season when you can.
Although I love BC, I just have no desire to freeze my feet off on the ice surface.
Towson and Campbell, John W. Pope Jr. Convocation Center in Bowies Creek, North Carolina, where Brother J-Dub gets in for free, and he probably could compass some tickets. Get in price $7.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay. And so we'll go rapid fire here for the rest of them that are, and I basically have set a ceiling for like $8 to walk in the door.
Less than a minute.
Fresno State and Air Force, $7. Clune Arena, Colorado Springs. That's a hard no. A lot of double digits. Also, Sharp Gymnasium, Houston, Texas. Lamar and Houston Christian, $7. Coastal Carolina and Troy. Trojan Arena, Troy, Alabama, $6. $7. University Credit Union Center, Davis, California. Cal State Northridge and UC Davis.
And while Jon Nelson is going through your budget,
Florida and LSU.
we got to say goodbye. We'll see you next week here
$4 to
on
go to Baton Rouge.
College Hoops Under the Radar. So long, everyone.
Please like and subscribe.